I never thought I'd be back in that office again. Rutherford and Ellis had always felt more like a museum than a law firm. Walls lined with oil paintings of long-dead men who shaped Charleston with pen strokes and backroom deals. The air smelled like leather, dust, and expensive silence. But this time, it wasn't about business. It was about the end of one legacy and the beginning of another. I sat in the high-backed leather chair across from Mr. Holden, our longtime family attorney, trying to still my hands as they clenched together in my lap. My sister, Camille Von Walker, sat to my right, polished to perfection in her tailored navy dress, Louboutin heels, and signature red lipstick. Her diamond tennis bracelet sparkled under the chandelier light, catching every eye in the room except mine. "Thank you for coming," Mr. Holden began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "Let's begin with your father's final will and testament." I swallowed. I already knew how this would go. Dad had been many things, successful, charismatic, powerful, but fair? Never when it came to me. Mr. Holden's voice was calm, practiced, deliberate. As stated in his will, dated July 12th of last year, all properties located at 168 Beach Hill Avenue, 42 Port Mason Drive, and the Edisto Island Estate are to be transferred in full to Camille Von Walker. I felt it first in my chest, a dull pressure like the ocean pushing down on me. "Further," Mr. Holden continued, "the Von and Walker Corporation, including all holdings, subsidiaries, and capital assets, are bequeathed entirely to Camille Von Walker." Camille's red lips curled slightly, a picture of grace and confidence. I didn't look at her. "And to Harper Vaughn, Mr. Holden paused. Too long. "The trust titled Personal Effects and Memorabilia will be granted, which includes family photographs, your mother's recipe journals, and selected jewelry passed down from your maternal line." That was it. A few heirlooms, a few memories, and a quiet erasure. Camille glanced at me, her tone drenched in honey and judgment. "This must be hard for you, Harper, but you know how Dad felt about your, unconventional lifestyle." I smiled without warmth. "You mean my independence?" Her laugh was soft, cruel. "Of course." Mr. Holden cleared his throat, visibly relieved that no shouting had erupted. "That concludes the reading." I rose from my chair, my dress smoothing down my legs as I steadied myself. Camille called out, "I'll make sure you're taken care of, Harper. Maybe there's a position for you at the company. Something junior, receptionist level, perhaps?" I turned to her with a calm smile. "That's generous of you, Camille. But I'll be just fine." The ride home was quiet. Charleston's streets blurred past the windshield as the golden leaves of late fall danced across the asphalt. My phone buzzed once, then again. "Camille, dinner tonight? We should talk about your next steps." I ignored it. She never reached out when Mom died, never once called during my divorce. And now? Now she wanted to talk. By the time I reached my small craftsman bungalow, bought with my own money, built from grants and reef research work, I felt the ache settle in. Not from loss, not even from anger, but from a lifetime of being unseen. Inside, I walked to my home office and knelt in front of a locked cabinet. I reached for the bottom drawer and retrieved a thick manila envelope. It had been 2 years since Mom handed it to me. Her hands were so thin, shaking, almost translucent. "Don't open this until after your father's gone," she had whispered. "Promise me, Harper." I had. And now, with my father's will still echoing in my mind, it was time. I opened the envelope. Inside, a stack of documents, stock certificates, land deeds, partnership agreements, and a handwritten letter, its cursive elegant and familiar. "My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, your father is gone, and I'm sure he's done exactly what I feared, left you nothing. But you were never nothing to me. While your father built a company based on status and control, I built something different, something quiet, sustainable, and entirely yours. Over the past 2 decades, I've invested in environmental ventures, clean energy, ocean technology, all inspired by your work, your vision. Every asset is in your name, hidden through trusts, LLCs, and blind holdings. Camille can't touch a penny. Use this wisely. Build something that lasts. All my love, Mom." I sat still for a long time, the words sinking in like deep-sea pressure. My mother hadn't just seen me, she had believed in me. She had prepared for this. My hands trembled as I flipped through the rest of the folder. EcoStart Holdings, Seaforge Technologies, Azure Futures Renewable Trust, a multi-million-dollar portfolio built quietly under my father's empire, and all of it was mine. I barely slept that night. Instead, I spent hours scanning every document, cross-referencing names, accounts, corporate structures. It was a financial spiderweb, one only a genius could build. Camille was right about one thing. I hadn't inherited Dad's empire. I'd inherited something far more powerful. I thought of the countless times I'd been dismissed at family dinners, called the dreamer, the marine hippie, the one who walked away. But I hadn't walked away. I'd simply chosen a different path. And Mom, she'd been paving it for me all along. At 2:12 a.m., I picked up my phone and texted Camille. "You're right. We should talk. Come to my house at 10 a.m. I have something to show you." Because if there's one thing Camille Vaughn Walker can't resist, it's control. And tomorrow, she would learn. She never had it. Camille was never late. She rang the doorbell exactly at 10 a.m., like someone arriving for a quarterly shareholder meeting, not a deeply personal confrontation. I took one last sip of my coffee, placed it gently on the coaster, and opened the door. There she stood, my sister, in her full boardroom glory, hair in glossy waves, a dark emerald blouse tucked into a cream-colored skirt, diamond earrings, nails painted a perfect nude. If Vogue had ever done a feature titled, "What to Wear When You Crush Your Sibling's Soul," she would have been the cover. Her eyes flicked over my porch, the weathered rocking chair, the fern baskets, the faded "Save Our Seas" sticker on my doorbell. Her nose twitched, just slightly. "Still charmingly rustic," she said, brushing past me without waiting to be invited in. I closed the door behind her. "Camille, this isn't a social visit. It never is with you," she replied, setting her designer tote on my entryway table like she owned it. I took a slow breath, leading her into the dining room. The air inside was warm with sunlight, pouring in through the side windows. On the table, neatly arranged in chronological order, were the contents of Mom's envelope, each document labeled, tabbed, and highlighted. Camille stopped short. Her gaze swept over the folders. Then she looked at me. "What is all this?" "This," I said, "is what Mom left me." She scoffed. "The recipes? The jewelry?" "No." I walked to the table and opened the first folder. This. Inside were stock certificates for renewable energy companies, deeds to coastal land reserves, signed agreements with marine tech firms, offshore trust statements, all legally notarized, all bearing my name. Camille's brows furrowed, but she didn't sit. "Where did you get these?" "Mom gave them to me 2 years before she died." "She didn't have this kind of wealth." "She did," I interrupted. "Just not in the way Dad understood. She started investing quietly in early-stage sustainability companies, the same fields Dad mocked at the dinner table. She saw the future coming, and she bet on it." Camille's lips parted. "And she gave it to you?" I nodded. She stepped back as if the air had shifted. "This isn't real. Mom wasn't some financial mastermind. She was a homemaker." "She played that role," I said, "so Dad wouldn't notice. But behind the scenes, she built an empire." "An empire!" Camille spat. "That's absurd. She barely had an email password she could remember." I opened another file and handed it to her. "Here's her correspondence with Sarah Lennox, legal counsel. 3-step transfer plans, independent audits, monthly updates for nearly 10 years. Camille took the file, scanned a few pages, then looked up. "But why didn't she say anything?" I paused, searching her eyes. "Because she didn't trust Dad. And frankly, I don't think she trusted you either." Camille flinched, just for a second. "You're saying Mom lied to all of us?" "I'm saying she protected what mattered most to her. And that was you? I was the only one who listened when she talked about the planet, about impact. You and Dad just saw her as the woman behind the man. I saw her as more." Camille finally sat, but she didn't look at me. Her hands trembled as she rifled through the documents. Some of these companies, I've seen these names in Forbes, Algae Corp, Solvera, Aquanet. Mom was the silent stakeholder in all of them, I said. Some of the top names in blue technology. And now they're under my direction. Her voice came out flat. How much is this all worth? I paused. More than Vaughn and Walker. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Camille's entire identity, CEO, heir, favorite daughter, hinged on being the apex of Dad's world. And here I was, revealing that Mom had made a bigger move than either of them had ever imagined. I can't believe this, she whispered. I sat in that lawyer's office, thinking I'd won. And I let you, I said calmly. Her head snapped up. Why? Because it wasn't about you. That stung. But if you think I'm going to sit back while you... What? Try to go public with this? She asked, rising to her feet again. You'll destroy everything Dad built. The company's image, the family's reputation. We'll look like fools. I crossed my arms. Or maybe the world will finally see who was really pulling the strings. I'm the CEO, she snapped. People look to me for leadership. Then lead, I replied, not by covering this up, but by adapting, evolving. Camille shook her head. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Do you know how many meetings I take every week? How many investors call me? How many fires I put out on Dad's behalf? I do, I said. And I also know how much you've sacrificed to be his version of perfect. She blinked. What is that supposed to mean? You were never allowed to fail, never allowed to rest, and now that he's gone, you're still performing for a ghost. Camille stood still, lips trembling, the cracks starting to show. So what now? She asked. You want to humiliate me? Publish a tell-all? Claim the throne? I took a deep breath. No, I don't want the company. I want to build something new, with the resources Mom gave me. Something that helps, not harms. And you don't want to work together? This isn't a power grab, Camille. This is a new direction, one you weren't ready for. She stared at the table for a long moment. Her shoulders stiffened. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, walking her to the door. But at least it'll be my regret, not one Dad programmed into me. She paused at the threshold, glancing back. You think you're so righteous, she said softly. But you've always had the freedom to walk away. I never did. Then maybe, I said, now's your chance. That night, I sat at my desk with the soft hum of my desk lamp filling the room. I opened my laptop and finished drafting the press release. The Mary Vaughn Foundation for Environmental Futures, launching with $240 million in assets, built by a woman the world never saw coming. Attached were letters of intent from 4 global partners, including Stanford, MIT, and Oceanica Ventures. At 11:59 p.m., I hit send. Across town, Camille's phone lit up. Subject, tomorrow's headline. And just like that, the legacy shifted. I didn't sleep that night, but I didn't need to. While Charleston's street lamps cast soft glows over the cobbled alleys, I sat at my desk rereading Mom's documents, cross-referencing, annotating, highlighting. I wasn't just preparing for the next move. I was building an entire campaign, strategic, airtight, and irreversible. I could feel it in my bones. Camille wouldn't take this quietly. She wouldn't let me walk away with a legacy that rewrote the family name, and at 6:47 a.m., I was proven right. My phone buzzed with an alert. Urgent. Legal action threatened overuse of family name. I blinked once, sighed, and opened the email. From Bradley McCade, board member Vaughn and Walker. Subject, clarification required regarding recent public disclosure. Harper, Camille has informed the board of some recent developments regarding your public statements. Several stakeholders are requesting a formal response. I believe it's in everyone's best interest if we schedule a private discussion. Best, Brad. Private discussion? No. This was already a public game. 10 minutes later, another message dropped. This one from Wells and Grant, Camille's personal legal team. A cease and desist order claiming that I was misappropriating proprietary knowledge linked to the Vaughn name and intellectual assets. Intellectual assets? I almost laughed. My mother's life work, dismissed as domestic hobby, was now being spun into corporate IP by the very people who had ignored it for decades. The message was clear. Camille was fighting back, and she was bringing an army. Entering the war room, I dialed Sarah Lennox. She picked up on the first ring. "She's escalating," I said. "Expected," Sarah replied. "She's running a defensive script, legal, PR, reputational control. But don't flinch. We hold the high ground. She's filing injunctions, trying to freeze assets. She'll fail. Your mother prepared for this exact scenario. Every transfer has a timestamp. Every entity has legal protection. If they press further, we countersue for defamation." "She'll try to spin the media," Sarah chuckled. "Let her. We'll control the narrative." At 9:30 a.m., I received a call from Charleston Daily News. "Ms. Vaughn," the reporter said, "we've confirmed that your mother held nearly $240 million in diversified clean tech investments. Are you prepared to comment?" I paused, then smiled into the phone. "Yes, and I'll be releasing the full details this afternoon through the official press briefing of the Mary Vaughn Foundation." The reporter exhaled sharply. "That's quite a reveal." "It's overdue," I said, "and it's just the beginning." Camille's fortress cracks. Meanwhile, Camille was facing her own tidal wave. According to a confidential tip from Lisa, Dad's longtime assistant, who now forwarded me internal memos out of what she called a moral obligation, the board of Vaughn and Walker was in chaos. Their stock had dropped 6% overnight, not because of me, but because of investor uncertainty. The story was spreading. Forbes, Bloomberg, EcoWatch, even the BBC Green Futures report picked it up with a headline that read, "The housewife who outplayed a corporate giant, Mary Vaughn's secret sustainability empire." Investors were asking why a company like Vaughn and Walker, still partnered with 3 major fossil fuel lobbies, had missed the rise of sustainable tech, and why the late founder's daughter, Camille, had failed to mention her mother's holdings to the board. The first direct confrontation. At 11:01 a.m., Camille showed up. No email, no call. Just the low growl of her luxury SUV pulling into my driveway like a battle tank. I opened the door before she knocked. "You leaked it," she hissed. "I announced it," I corrected. "You don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to hijack our name for some hippie science passion project." "This isn't about the family name, Camille. This is about truth." She stormed past me, into my house, straight to the dining table still covered in folders and strategy plans. "You've tanked our brand in under 48 hours. Maybe the brand was already crumbling." "You are out of your depth," she snapped, slamming her palm against the table. "You think you're smart? You're a glorified grant writer with a choral obsession. You've never run a business. You've never even sat in a boardroom." "Neither had Mom," I said. "And she built something 10 times more impactful than Vaughn and Walker." Camille fell silent, but her eyes screamed. The proof they couldn't ignore. I pulled a folder from my briefcase and handed it to her. Inside, copies of financial audits, Harvard Clean Capital certifications, and signed partnership letters from 3 global nonprofits. "I'm not doing this for revenge," I said. "I'm doing it because Mom built a vision, and someone needs to finish it." "You mean you," Camille muttered. "I mean someone who cares more about legacy than optics." She stared down at the documents, her hand trembling. Then she whispered, "I can't stop this, can I?" I shook my head. "You can either resist it or join something bigger than both of us." Camille's last PR move. That evening, Camille made her own move. She appeared on a local TV interview, dressed in black, her expression measured. "I was blindsided," she said on camera. "I loved my mother dearly. I wish I'd known more about her passions, about what she was building." The interviewer leaned in. "Will Vaughn and Walker integrate her vision going forward?" Camille smiled thinly. "We're exploring every opportunity." It was damage control, strategic, polished. But beneath the surface, she was rattled, and I knew it. My move, from silence to strategy. At 10 p.m., I launched the Mary Vaughn Foundation website. Within 2 hours, 48,000 visitors, 1,500 new donors, 3 confirmed meetings with academic partners, 1 exclusive interview request from the New York Times. I received a text from Camille shortly after midnight. "You're going to kill the company." I replied, "No. I'm going to show people it was never alive in the first place." The next morning, I met with a class of marine biology students at the University of Charleston. I brought models of our new reef technology, maps of our land protection zones, and digital displays of Mom's impact tracking. One student raised her hand. "Dr. Vaughn," she asked, "what made your mom keep this hidden for so long?" I paused. "She wasn't hiding," I said softly. "She was preparing." "For what?" the student asked. I smiled. For someone to finally be brave enough to reveal it. Outside, the sun hit the water like it was lighting the whole coast on fire. And I knew. The tide had turned. The morning air in Charleston had a strange edge to it, crisp, electric, like something was about to break loose. I stood barefoot in my kitchen, coffee cooling between my palms, the early light cutting stripes across my worn hardwood floor. The past week had been a hurricane. A quiet, calculated storm that swept through the glossy halls of Vaughn and Walker and left cracks in its polished facade. The Wall Street Journal headline had dropped at 6:02 a.m., Vaughn and Walker faces internal crisis amidst legacy dispute and sustainability scandal. I didn't even have to read the rest. The title alone was enough to rattle boardrooms from Charleston to Wall Street. But I read it anyway. Twice. Camille's photo was on the front page, hair perfect, jaw tight, eyes tired. The article detailed everything, how the company's stagnant growth and environmental negligence stood in stark contrast to Mary Vaughn's private investments in global sustainability. They called it a missed pivot of generational proportion. Investors were quoted anonymously. If Mary Vaughn was the visionary, then what does that make Camille? The shift had begun. Meanwhile, inside the glass castle, at Vaughn and Walker headquarters, the boardroom was a battlefield. Camille stood at the head of the table, surrounded by men and women who once applauded her, now barely meeting her eyes. "I will not let this company be hijacked by tabloid drama and emotional spin," she declared, voice steady but sharp. Dana Kravitz, the firm's largest stakeholder, spoke up via video call from New York. "It's not drama, Camille. It's data. Public trust has shifted. Harper's initiatives are gaining global traction. We're hemorrhaging relevance." Camille's lips thinned. "We've built this brand on legacy and leadership, on consistency." "Legacy without evolution is just a tombstone," Dana replied. "And consistency, that's what Blockbuster said before Netflix." Camille turned to Gerald Whitmore, Dad's old golf buddy, board senior. "Gerald, back me up." He exhaled, slow and long. "I think it's time we discussed succession planning." Just like that, the ground beneath Camille started to give. At the same time, across town, I stood before a full lecture hall at the Coastal Environmental Sciences Institute. Students, professors, journalists. The official launch of the Mary Vaughn Foundation was underway. We unveiled 3 core initiatives. 1, the Coral Rebirth Project, fully funded reef reconstruction across 5 countries. 2, Green Futures Incubator, seed funding for climate tech startups. 3, Education Access Grants, full scholarships for underprivileged STEM students. I wasn't used to cameras or applause, but I didn't flinch. My mother wasn't loud, I said into the microphone. She wasn't flashy. She never had a title, but she had vision, and she bet on the one person nobody else did, me. A ripple moved through the crowd. Not just polite applause, but real connection. That's when I saw her, Camille, in the back row, behind 2 donors and a student holding a poster that read, "Thank you, Mary Vaughn." Her face was unreadable, but her hands were trembling. Vaughn and Walker implodes. By noon, my phone buzzed with another news alert. Camille Vaughn Walker, removed from CEO position. Amid stakeholder vote. It wasn't a whisper anymore, it was thunder. The vote had been 6-3. She was offered a consultancy role. She declined. No press release, no statement, just silence from her camp. But Lisa, ever loyal, texted me. She cried in the parking garage, first time I've ever seen her crack. And for a second, I didn't feel victorious. I felt heavy, like something important had finally snapped inside her, the envelope that changed everything. That evening, Sarah Lennox arrived at my house with a sealed envelope. "She wanted you to open this if Camille ever lost the company," Sarah said, placing it gently on my kitchen table. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. To Harper, if Camille falls. I opened it slowly, heart pounding. Inside was a simple document, blueprint for the Vaughn Center for Environmental Commerce, a hybrid institution, a business accelerator, research lab, and policy think tank. Entirely sustainable, entirely independent. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "If your sister loses everything, give her a reason to build something better, not just with you, but within herself." Mom. I stared at it for a long time. Mom hadn't wanted revenge. She wanted rebirth. Camille speaks. The next day, Camille finally reappeared on Good Morning America. She looked smaller on the screen. Not broken, but human. I was raised to think that success meant control, that leadership was about holding everything together. But my mother, she showed me another kind of power. The interviewer leaned in. "Do you regret the choices you made?" Camille didn't blink. "I regret not asking more questions sooner. About my mother, about my sister, about myself." And just like that, America saw a new Camille. Not a CEO, but a daughter trying to understand the woman who outsmarted them all, planting what she never did before. 2 days later, Camille showed up unannounced again. But this time she wore jeans. No makeup, no entourage, no stilettos, just her. "I read Mom's second letter," she said quietly. "The one Sarah gave me." I nodded. "Then you know what she asked us to do. To lead. Together." She looked around at the garden. My modest backyard. The place Mom had once planted native species to restore the bee population. "I never helped her," Camille said. "Not once. I thought it was beneath me." "She didn't care. She just wanted you near." Her voice broke. "I wasn't kind to you, Harper. I was cruel because I was scared." "Of what?" "That Dad might have been wrong, and that you were right." The offer. I handed her the envelope. She opened it, read the title. Co-chair, Vaughn Center for Environmental Commerce. "You're giving me a seat?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you a shovel. This time you help build it." She looked up at me. And for the first time, I didn't see competition. I saw possibility. And maybe the beginning of forgiveness. The sun dipped behind the Charleston skyline as we stood shoulder to shoulder, overlooking the foundation site. A single quote engraved on the wall from Mom's favorite book: "The best kind of revolution is the one that changes hearts, not just headlines." Camille reached out, brushing her fingers over the words. She really believed in us. I nodded, even when we didn't. A year had passed, 12 full moons, 4 seasons, 52 weeks since I opened the envelope that changed everything. Charleston, in early autumn, looked different now. Cleaner skies, more solar panels glinting off rooftops, bike lanes where there used to be billboard ads. The city hadn't been transformed overnight, but something had shifted, quietly, permanently. And at the heart of it all stood the Mary Vaughn Center for Environmental Commerce, glass walls gleaming in the morning light like a cathedral made not for worship but for action. Today was the first annual Global Impact Summit. Over 500 attendees. Scientists, youth activists, government officials, CEOs of companies I'd once thought untouchable, and somewhere among them, my sister, Camille. A garden we never tended. Before. She arrived just before 9 a.m., alone. No press in tow, no designer bag, just jeans, a navy blazer, and flats that clicked softly on the stone steps. She paused at the etched glass plaque out front. Built on vision, not inheritance, the Mary Vaughn Center. I watched her from the top of the stairs. Would she turn around? Would she retreat the way she always had when the narrative didn't suit her? But this time, she exhaled deeply and kept walking. I met her just past the entrance hall where kids were gathered around a holographic coral reef model, shouting out fish names and laughing. Behind them, interactive panels explained climate change, sustainability, and ocean health. Camille's eyes scanned the space. Awe softened her jawline. A hint of something else, too. Nostalgia, maybe? It's beautiful, she said. She would have loved this. She built this, I replied. We just made it real. 2 chairs by the water. We found a quiet corner on the balcony overlooking the Ashley River. The breeze was salty, the wind turbines in the distance, turning slowly like time was being unwound. Camille sat beside me in silence. Then, "I've been working with the Marine Learning Center," she said, "teaching 5th graders about ecosystems. Me, the girl who couldn't tell plankton from plastic." I smiled. "You're not the only one who's changed." She turned to me, her expression raw. "I'm sorry, Harper. For everything. For what I said, what I didn't say. For laughing at your work. For making you feel like Mom's love was a consolation prize." I didn't answer right away. I just let the wind speak for a moment. "I hated you," I said quietly. "I hated how easy everything seemed to come for you. I hated how Dad looked at you like you were the only one worth investing in." Camille's eyes welled up. "And now? Now I don't want hate in my legacy." We sat in the quiet, 2 daughters learning how to be sisters again. The final envelope. After lunch, Sarah Lennox found us in the main conference hall. She handed me an envelope, thick, cream-colored, sealed with my mother's wax stamp. Camille's breath caught. Sarah smiled gently. This one was labeled, "For Harper and Camille, when you're finally ready to lead together." We opened it together. Inside, a single handwritten line, "Transform the world, but don't forget to transform each other." And beneath it, a list of initiatives our mother had sketched out. Joint leadership retreats, ethics, first entrepreneurship programs, a traveling mobile education lab to reach rural schools. At the bottom, one final line, "Let your legacy be more than healing wounds. Let it be planting forests." Camille folded the letter, her hands trembling. She was always 2 steps ahead. I nodded. And now it's our job to catch up. The final speech. As the afternoon sun slanted through the tall glass windows, I stepped onto the main stage of the Global Impact Summit. Camille stood to the side, watching. My mother taught me that real legacy isn't loud. It doesn't come with headlines or handshakes or nameplates on buildings. It comes with vision and courage and the quiet belief that change is worth fighting for, even if no one else sees it yet. I looked out over the crowd, people who once doubted us, people who now funded us. And maybe most important of all, it comes with grace, the kind that forgives, the kind that includes, the kind that believes people can evolve. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was steady, like rainfall on a dry earth. A new foundation. The next morning, Camille and I met at the edge of Charleston Bay. She brought a group of kids from her marine education program. We released biodegradable buoys, tiny sea sensors made possible by our mother's tech investments, to track currents and microplastic data in real time. The kids asked questions, took notes, laughed when one of the buoys splashed too hard. One little boy tugged Camille's sleeve. "Miss Camille, do you think the ocean will ever be clean again?" She bent down, smiled. "I think it'll always be trying, but we can help it get close." The boy nodded like he understood something bigger than most adults ever would. Camille turned to me. "You were right all along." "No," I said. "Mom was." The final text. That evening my phone buzzed. "Camille, do you remember when Dad said we couldn't build anything that lasted unless we followed his plan?" Me. "I remember." Camille. "Guess we proved him wrong." Me. "Or maybe we proved Mom right." 1 year later, the Mary Vaughn Foundation had funded over $480 million in sustainability initiatives. The Vaughn Center educated more than 36,000 students in its first year. Camille now led the Environmental Ethics Education Fund, traveling to schools across the country, teaching leadership through purpose. I continued working in reef restoration, now partnered with international governments. And once a year, we gathered in Mom's garden, planting real seeds, telling stories to kids who would never know her, but who would inherit the world she believed we could create. Closing scene. As the sun dipped low over the water, Camille stood beside me, holding a clipboard and a wildflower seed packet. "Ready for our next project?" she asked. I looked up toward the waves, the wind, the stars slowly blinking into view. Always. Because some stories don't end. They root deeper, they grow stronger, and they carry forward, one ripple at a time.